If you meet with me, you're going to get a purple bruise. And it's going to be somewhere where you know you need the bruise. You might have had an accident there or a pain at that bruise before. You're aware, but I'm just going to poke it and push on it because I think that's what you need to hear.
Okay, in my mind, and I think this is true, you're a master of a lot of different things. Learning, systems, growth, figuring people out, figuring yourself out.
And my goal is improved. My goal isn't some metric or some milestone. It's just straight up, get better all the time. The best way to describe it would be like poking at the world and then seeing what pokes back in order to sort of calibrate how extreme can I make some of the changes.
How long can you go through these loops?
As long as you want. It can drive you crazy too. There is no end. You start going down that path, you will find these. And then you can decide whether it's a story you want to keep or not.
Let's talk about that. Hiten, I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, in my mind, and I think this is true, you're a master of a lot of different things. Learning, systems, growth, figuring people out, figuring yourself out, life. So it's really impressive. And I think 10 years ago, I wanted to be someone like you, someone who runs multiple companies, produces a lot of content, does a podcast, blog. I'm still figuring out how to get there. So
Yeah, I think you're getting there.
slow, very, very slow step. So let's start with something that you just mentioned to me before this conversation. The new year, new you. You mentioned that you start thinking about the new year around October. Tell me more about your process for setting up new goals for the new year and what do you actually do?
Yeah, I think the thing we were talking about was, time is artificial and we kind of make it up as society and have made it up. So as much as I believe that, where like I want to evolve, improve, iterate myself all the time, there are specific time sort of milestones that I try to figure out how to leverage to make change happen. And I think that that's the broader way I think about it. And what I've found for myself over the last, let's say 5, 6, 7 years is by the time Halloween hits, I want to have enough clarity about what I want to change for the next year. So meaning oh, there's these areas that I feel like we should improve, or I wanted to get to X, Y, or Z this year and I haven't. There were a few of those areas actually last year where I just didn't get to it. And so then what I do is between Halloween and basically like New Year, I'm sort of, the best way to describe it would be like poking at the world and then seeing what pokes back in order to sort of calibrate how extreme can I make some of the changes, who's going to push back, what's going to push back, am I like feeling good about how I'm thinking about it? The reason I do that is because starting about Halloween, a lot of things start slowing down. And the world is at a slower pace, which actually just helps me think. Because especially these days when there's so much information and things you can dive into and focus and things like that are much harder. So it's kind of a long-winded way of saying like, I actually don't have goals. I don't look at it like that because I think there are very clear things when it comes to a business where you should have goals. Totally. Like, revenue goals, hiring goals, whatever those goals are, that's all fine. But personally, I'm just trying to improve myself and my goal is improvement. My goal isn't like some metric or some milestone. It's just straight up, get better all the time. There are times in the world when, to be honest, it's easier to reflect or easier to do certain things. And like, I've learned to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that time is an artificial construct, but at the same time, having those milestones or seasons when as you said, that not as much information will come in and you have just more time personally to reflect because you're not overflooded with externality is really helpful. So a couple of things to dive into. When you say you poke at things and see what pokes back, give me the details. What does your process actually look like? So you're on a journey of self-improvement and bettering yourself. What does that in Hiten's operating system actually mean?
Yeah. So like, I love that you asked it the way you did, because I tend to really want to give, and also get is harder, but give very contextual advice. So this idea of poking is a me thing. It might be a you thing. It might be a someone else thing, but based on your personality and how you deal with the world, you might do this differently. The way I deal with the world is I like to experiment and test things, even subconsciously, when I don't know I'm doing it. So I will give you like a very unrelated example, because I think that'll help. Like, if I'm speaking to someone, I am subconsciously, almost automatically testing what resonates with them and what doesn't.
It's almost like you're running the experiments of testing out a conversation with them in the background.
Yeah, basically. And it's not like consciously I can describe, oh, she said this, I said that, this happened. I don't mean that. It's more like little nuances and cues of like what interests them, or what reaction do I get, or do I get a disgusting reaction, or the opposite, or what do I get? And so I sort of, let's put it this way. I think these type of things are not even superpowers. They're like natural abilities we gravitate towards, and oftentimes we don't know. So when I didn't know, it was kind of like this. So I've been in startups in the ecosystem for quite some time, like over 20 years. And there are people I might have met, let's say 15, 16, 17, 18 years ago. And I'm actually thinking of someone very specific. And I would give him thoughts and advice in such a way that it would take him and everyone at that time their own time to figure out what to do with what I said. It was usually because I felt like I knew the answer. Like, let's say they were asking me advice about their startup or something. I would usually go straight to them, their personality, why they do the things they do, instead of helping them with the question they actually had. But I would hit some root there that like, almost like, I called it like, if you meet with me back then, probably this is the best way to describe it. If you meet with me, you're going to get a purple bruise. And it's going to be somewhere where you know you need the bruise, you know it hurt, you might have had an accident there, or a pain at that bruise before. You're aware, but I'm just going to poke it and push on it because I think that's what you need to hear. So what would happen is someone would come back to me 6 months later and be like, hey, that thing you said to me 6 months ago, I get it now. And you know, you might think, hey, that's good. Win for them, win for me. But I think like what I realized back then is like, I want to improve my ability to help someone so they take action literally right after the meeting. And that doesn't mean I'm giving them tactics or honestly saying or doing anything completely different than what I did before. So my way of improving that process was meet with someone, and then right away after, I'm taking notes that I will never look at again. And that's what got me to subconsciously, without thinking about it, be able to improve in the moment with a person and a conversation. Because I was helping a bunch of founders. I always loved doing that. And I would talk to them about things. And it went from 6 months to literally I'm getting a text the next day. And the person's like, hey, thank you for that. That was really helpful. Blah, 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 blah. Then I'm getting maybe a text a week later, a month later. And whatever I said to them actually resonated with them. And I just learned to like tune it. It wasn't like I was holding anything back. It was more like I was priming them to be open to what I say without the reaction I used to get. Because the reaction I used to get was clearly not providing them with enough value fast enough, in my opinion. Maybe in their opinion it was, but in mine it wasn't.
I'm gonna, just for anyone listening, dive into the whole topic of personalities and how you became a student of yourself and people around you, because I think that's a very interesting topic. Coming back to your own process and you poking at things around you. So you said that subconsciously you're always running experiment because that's how your personality works. And so throughout the year, around October, you start running experiments on poking different areas of your life to see how they respond. So what does that process actually look like?
Yeah.
Like, what are you poking at? What does that look like? Are you writing? Are you talking to people? Like with the example of talking to founders, maybe there is a, a Rolodex of people that you're interacting with and you're running quote unquote experiments.
Most of the time it's something that most of the time the process is very much like, it's actually very blunt and can be applied to almost anything, which is just identify the current state and figure out what bugs me about it in all the various areas where I think I want to improve. So I usually have multiple businesses. So that's usually the first low-hanging fruit. Most of my life stuff is very sorted out, like in terms of family and all those things, living situations, all that. So most of the time, those are not areas that I care to do anything about. So it's like a business, and it's a blunt process of like, what do I not like about this thing right now? Not even what do I want to improve. It's like, just what do I not like? And usually that starts with, what is the current state? And without making it a goal, where would I like to get to? And then basically just poking whatever I need to poke to figure out where that difference is and how I can make that shift. So sometimes it's people, sometimes it's vast majority of the time, it's how I'm thinking about it. That's like probably 95% of the problem.
And are you writing things down? Are you talking to AI?
So I take a lot of notes. AI showed up for this process this year. I have, getting into some of the personality stuff. I will make a project. I've made a project. I've put all my personality stuff in it, and I can chat with it. Whether it's my Enneagram or my Human Design or whatever I'm into at the time. I'm into these things.
Yeah.
But maybe other people are into other things, right? You put that in there, whether it's horoscope or whatever. I mean, even if you want MBTI, because that's more scientific in your mind. I don't think it is, but other people do.
Big five.
Yeah. So whatever it is, put it in there, give it simple instructions like, help me help myself or something. You don't need to make it complicated. And then just chat with the project. And it is amazing how contextual it is when it has your context and stuff about you. And I've learned so many things. So that I built out last year at some point.
Which AI are you using?
I actually built it in Claude first, and I used to use Claude a lot, and then I moved over to ChatGPT. And I think they're all good for different things now, and they're starting to figure out their lanes. And I don't think Claude is very good for the work that I try to do around myself.
I saw this tweet the other day that ChatGPT is like your personal COO and Claude is more of like a CMO. I recently started using 4 AIs in parallel to see what results they yield, but I'm still trying to figure out which one's best at what. Yeah,
I don't think Claude writes great content compared to ChatGPT, and I know a lot of people do.
Yeah, that's a hot take.
And my argument is that Claude is good at writing code, not content. And it always will be, because that's what they care about. And part of the reason I don't use Claude for that is Claude has a tendency to like the hammer they have is code. So everything you give it, it will try to run code for you. When you're writing, I don't want it to run any code. Like even ChatGPT has this problem sometimes, but if I upload a CSV or Excel file, it's trying to run code. Guess what? If I copy the cells and paste them in the blank chat, it's not going to run code, but it's still got all the context. So I think there's these nuances, but overall, I do want to share my main gripe with Claude. My main gripe with Claude is I run out of tokens, the errors are bad, and it gets unusable really fast. And I found myself switching over to ChatGPT constantly. So even if it was better, if it doesn't work when I need it, it's not going to work. And this is a consistent pattern. Not to complain about what they're doing, but someone should tell them that like they can build a better product very easily if they just cared about these things. Because I really don't think they do, unfortunately. So some of this is just a user complaining about the tool, but other parts of it are like, I used to use Claude only. I didn't want to use ChatGPT for this stuff. They pushed me over to ChatGPT. Then I realized, oh, for the things I'm doing, I can get everything done with ChatGPT because whatever I was doing with Claude, I can get ChatGPT to do it as good, if not better. It might take a little more work, fine, in some areas, but that's how both of them are. Some stuff is easier in ChatGPT, some stuff's easier in Claude, and some stuff's completely easier in Gemini. I would actually say COO is actually Gemini, in my opinion. And Claude is much more personal. Or not Claude, sorry. ChatGPT is much more personal. And Claude sits there trying to... I actually think it's the best for engineers today.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So you have a project built out now in ChatGPT. How much time do you spend on poking and reflecting?
I wouldn't use most of the time what I'll do is the poking is more about like testing things. That's why I kind of gave you that example of like, if I'm talking to someone, I figured out how to make that something I can improve just by taking those notes, because I can be like, oh, like those notes might be like, oh crap, I used this word and they didn't seem to understand it.
And so every single meeting you have, you take notes afterwards?
I used to, yeah.
Oh, you used to? What happened?
I hit the goal I wanted to.
Oh, of the goal.
I stopped getting that 6-month thing.
I see,
and I was getting, and so now it's like very natural. And we've been in meetings like that, right? Like you were able to think about what to do during the meeting and after, and you didn't come back to me 6 months later and be like, you were right. What was happening a lot is they come back 6 months later, you were right. Like if I was right and it took you 6 months to come back to me, I actually was wrong. I didn't actually help you enough, right? So what the point there is like, there is a investigative sort of personality trait that I have, that I know I have. I'm just trying to utilize it in good ways versus bad. Because bad ways would be like, if you notice, like when I talk to you, I rarely will ask you a question.
That's true, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Why?
I guess you want to... that's a good question. You want to hear what comes up naturally without you leading me in a specific direction.
Right. If I ask you a question, that means I have an agenda. I try to make the vast majority of my meetings with no agenda. Because when I have an agenda in a meeting, it's usually work. And that means that like, I will typically be the person, whether other people on the call know it or not, to refocus the conversation, which is very different than trying to help a friend or talk to someone, right? So I think I actually have those modes. So if I'm in, like someone I met a while ago, I worked with them. They had never been in a meeting with me, like a work meeting, but I work with them, but we've never been on a meeting. We got in a meeting and it was just one of those meetings where I was doing a lot of that refocusing.
Refocusing with questions, right? Or how do you, what do you
Yeah, questions are usually the best because you ask a question, everyone starts, and if you ask the right question, you know the game, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. And that's why I was going there. So if I'm in that mode, it's there. And then literally she gets off the call and she messaged me, she's like, oh, so that's Hiten in a meeting. I'm like, no, that's Hiten in a meeting that matters. That really matters. Where if we don't get this right, someone's fired or someone's going to be mad or we're just going to mess this up, right? So I think like the muscle for me is actually being able to identify, this is the system and the core thing that relates to a lot of the things we've talked about, but is being able to identify current state and what we need to change. And I'm just trying to get us to that change as fast as possible. And that's the process that I try to use during the October to December thing. And the thing I've just learned is like the world is quieter. That's it, which helps me think. Because when the world is noisy, I need to go somewhere to think. But I can be in my home and the world is quiet and I can think in a way that I couldn't on a normal day, whether it's because of meetings or just the energy out there.
What is the most effective way for you to think? Is it writing? Is it something else?
I actually haven't found any better way than talking it out
Oh.
and self-talk.
Oh, what do you mean? Like rubber ducking?
Sort of, yeah, but more like, okay. So you asked the question and you mentioned tactics, but talking it out can be writing it out. It can be recording it on a voice recorder.
That's true.
It can be talking to ChatGPT about it, or it could be self-talk. But at the end of the day, like if it's basically what I think most of what I do is what people would call metacognition, where you're thinking about thinking. Why'd you say this? Why'd you say this? Why'd you do this? Now, I was talking to someone who's very good at poker. And he's like, oh, there's this thing in poker. I forgot what it's called. My uncle had me read Liar's Poker back in the day. Forgot why. But the person said, there's this thing in poker. And I'm like, what is it? And he's like, well, it's this thing that I see you doing. Do you know you're doing it? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, there's this thing where what you're trying to figure out, and this is what chess and other things too, which is like something along the lines of, I know what you're thinking, that I'm thinking, that you're thinking, that I'm thinking. And he was basically saying the levels, the deeper you can go around that, and that just way of understanding like something or trying to is basically some poker strategy. Again, I probably butchered it, but what I latched onto is the idea that like, if you go back to what I was trying to do subconsciously, if I say something, I want to know what you're thinking when I say it. But I can only do that if I already knew what you were thinking before. It gets really weird, but like, I think you can get better at stuff like that just by thinking about your own thinking. Because then you can think about other people's thinking much easier. As long as you don't get stuck in personalities of yourself or you have a better understanding.
So when I hear you say you're thinking about your own thinking, I'm thinking that you're trying to figure out how you work and who you are. What does it mean to think about your own thinking? Like you think, okay, I'm having this thought, and then you're thinking, you're trying to reverse engineer why you're having this thought.
Yeah.
How long can you go through these loops?
As long as you want. It can drive you crazy too. There is no end. I mean, it's like, if you really think about it, there's no end to life. Like, yeah, we die and all that, but like, there's no end. Like we don't even know why we're here. Like, there's no answer. So this is one of those things where it is existential, as you can think about that all day. But in a specific area, like what I mentioned is, if I want to improve my thinking about someone else's problems, businesses in this case, I did that loop. Okay, I'm talking to them about it. I'm giving them feedback. I took some notes to just make sure I essentially codified the learnings. I never look at the notes again, ever. Because usually if there's follow-ups, I'll do them. Those I have a good memory for. Those are easy. The harder parts are like, I said this thing, it didn't resonate. I said this thing, it resonated. I should have said it this way, or I missed this thing to say, things like that. So I would just do that because I wanted to get good at giving people contextual advice. That's very hard to do. Now, you would think that asking a lot of questions gets you contextual advice. Actually, figuring out how they think is why you're asking the questions. If I can figure out how you think by you just talking, that's much more interesting to me than by me asking questions. To your point, because I'm leading the witness somewhere. If I don't know where to lead them, why the hell am I asking the question? Now, if you came to me and said, hey, I have a marketing problem, first thing I'll do is, okay, what's the marketing problem? You'd probably say it. And then I would be like, okay, and ask you a few questions to dig in. But we started with something you cared about, and I could go from there. But the amount of questions I'm going to ask versus what someone who is as curious as me is probably 10x difference. Because my curiosity, I don't need answered because you answered my question. I can get it answered by just hearing you talk.
So then for someone listening and trying to be like, okay, I want to be much more self-reflective and I want to understand how to set goals that would be, or how to figure out systems and ways for how to improve myself and my own thinking and my own life, what can they take away from your process?
I think you have to first realize that most of the things you're doing and why you're doing them are completely not conscious to you in a way that they could be. So the easiest, quickest thing I would say is everyone gets triggered. If you get triggered, and what I mean by that is somebody says or does something, or you read something, or let's just say more broadly, you experience something. That could even be reading an article, and it triggers you. Trigger means it invokes an emotion or feeling that you did not have prior. Could be negative or positive. We all have them. If you can find out, if you can, when it happens, one, remember it happened, and two, find your time, whether it's in the moment or after, to self-reflect on it, that's the easiest tactic. Because it's likely you're going to find negative triggers first and go for those, because we all are probably going to go there. But if something's legit triggering you and you don't want it to, or you want it, even if you want it to, but you want to improve yourself, you probably should look at what's going on there. So that's the easy one. It's like, why'd you get mad? So the simple thing is, why'd you get mad? When they said that, why'd you get mad? And you can ask that to yourself, and again, like, there's a lot of theories and psychology around all of this stuff, but at the end of the day, we're living in our own minds. So all I'm suggesting is that you figure out what house you're living in and where the rooms are and all this stuff. Like, I used to have this thing where my CTO and I, we would talk about this, and like, one of the things we came up with is like, oh, there's boxes in the mind, and that box is over there and it's shut and it's got their duct tape. Okay. Or that box is over there. Cool. And what that means is there's a box. I don't have to go open the box, go look in it, and I know the box exists. And the more of these boxes you have, the more complicated your life is. So you try to reduce the number of boxes ideally. So that was an analogy that I had gotten to, which is like, because there are things that we have in our minds that we cannot go look at, but we can probably label them and say that's a box. So then it exists. Otherwise, we're not acknowledging it. So whether it's that analogy or whatever the heck works for you, the house, the whatever, if you do this, you will come up with those things, and those things will help your life. But those things might be very different than the things I've come up with.
Yeah, I love this whole topic of mind and understanding yourself, because I think that if you truly, genuinely understand yourself, you have so many unlocks for what you truly want, how to get there. As you said, what triggers you probably gives you some sort of additional information. What made you, do you remember the moments that you started looking at yourself and looking to understand how your mind works? What triggered this? Were you always like this?
I think I was always like this somehow. And it was honestly just curiosity more than anything else, and being comfortable asking why and not having an answer. A lot of people are not comfortable asking why and not having an answer. But I generally feel very comfortable with that. But again, personality. Most people don't feel comfortable with that I've met. Like, you can't ask, they can't ask why and not get an answer. Another way I think about this, and again, knowing yourself, is when I was working, like, somebody at my last job, my only job, somebody came to me and they're like, hey, out of everyone I've ever worked with, you're the most decisive person. I'm like, okay. And this person worked at like Apple and worked at Dropbox where I was at the time. And like, the reason I'm mentioning that is, like, I know for myself that I've gotten really good at, and probably was pretty good at this early on. You can give me 10% of the information and I'm willing to make a decision. And I've noticed a lot of people need 90%, not 10. Give me 10. I'll make a decision, or I'll make a decision that we cannot make a decision, and here's exactly why and what we should go find out. But usually, even with 10%, I can go make a decision. And so she was saying that's decisive. What I'm saying is actually your confidence and conviction in making a decision with very little information. But if you think about it, that's what a founder does. That's all a founder does. They're never going to have enough information. So you have to make a decision with way less information and feel confident in it enough to make moves as a result of it.
Yeah, 10% of information is not. It's interesting that you are so decisive, given the 10% of information, and at the same time you also think so much. Because in my mind, I'm like, if you think
Those
so
are two
much, you
different
have all
things,
this meta thinking, then you kind of fall into the category of overthinkers, and then you can be like overthinking the
If
decision.
you've thought enough, though, you can reduce the amount of information you need going forward.
Because you've had enough experience to see
Maybe.
how
But the thinking is the experience in that case,
that's very meta.
right? Like if you think about thinking, you're experiencing something. While we normally think of, I experienced that thing. I did that marketing, I did that product thing, or I did that sales thing, and that's experience. But like if you can just think about a problem, that's actually experience too. So if you're experiencing all these things and doing them in a way where there's utility for it, then like, yeah, like why do you need 80, 90% of the information? You don't. 10% is good enough.
Was the 10%, did you reach 10% over time, or has that always been the case?
I think that's always been the case. And I think most of it.
Do you think it comes from childhood or your parents?
I think it just comes from, I know I go back to this word, but I actually think it just comes from not losing parts of curiosity that a lot of people just lose over time. And usually they lose it because they're not in environments where, I'm going to get into another concept, but where freedom of thought is actually incentivized. And so I think there's freedom of time. Usually you get freedom of time because you don't need to make money for a living. That's the typical way. Or you get time after whatever you're doing to make money. But freedom of thought is actually more useful and impactful if you think about a lot of things like that. Like you can have a full-time job, but that job doesn't take up your brain space in a way where you don't have that freedom to think. And so I would say that like I learned early on from the environment my parents created that curiosity should be valued, root causing things with 5 whys or things like that, even though they never said it. I learned about it many years later, was how you find things. But my parents were physicians, and my dad loves my mom too, but like it's like research is what they valued and cared about. So whether they talked about it at home or not, the scientific method and those things were like all around me. They never used those words. They weren't like professors or anything like that, but that's the work they did. They liked doing research. They liked doing experiments. So I was exposed to that, but I was also exposed to like things like I had no curfew, but I was told from my father that if you have a problem, I need to be your first call. I never really did that, although I should have, because I caused a lot of trouble growing up. But I was given the freedom to think and explore it without a lot of rigid worldviews that weren't mine. And I think most people grow up and realize that the worldviews that weren't theirs are still running in their system. A lot of what I said with triggers and all that, if you start going down that path, you will find these things. And then you can decide whether it's a story you want to keep or not. If you don't want to keep it, those are the stories you don't keep from childhood and things like that are actually the ones that are going to help you grow if you stop keeping this, right? Because you're essentially removing an attachment to some kind of story or some kind of thing that you kind of got in your head.
Wow, so many things to dive into. Just to set the agenda ground, I want to dive into how your parents did that, giving you space to think. I want to dive into curiosity. I want to come back to getting to know yourself and personality tests, personality frameworks. Also want to talk about your early entrepreneurial journey, because in my mind, I'm like, oh, you're saying that there is space for curiosity and space to think, but at the same time, you're also very busy, I assume, building your first company and then multiple companies. Okay, so let's get started. how exactly did your parents give you that space to think? And do you feel like you're cultivating the same environment for your kids right now?
Yeah. So I think one thing that I shared was as I grew up, I didn't have a curfew. So that didn't put any limits to.
Can you explain what that is? I actually don't understand what that means.
Oh, yeah. So most of the time, most kids were told, hey, you have to be home by 9 p.m.
Okay.
This was a time when we didn't have phones and we actually cared about getting a car when we were 16. So fortunate enough, got a car, but I didn't have a curfew because my dad didn't value the fact that I was home at a certain time.
Okay.
He valued the fact that I was okay over thinking that being home at a certain time meant I was
Over
okay.
like controlling you and your
So
decisions.
he gave me the trust to make good and bad decisions around these type of things. So that was much later. I think younger, when I was 4 years old, my dad told me I should be an entrepreneur. Then as I grew up,
When you were 4 years old, damn.
that's when he started. And he's a physician and he is Indian, and that is very atypical. I don't think any of his peers or colleagues or, cohorts of his age said that to their kids, right? Especially if they were physicians or they were
Do you
lawyers.
think he was trying to fulfill his own dream through
I'm
you
sure he
somehow?
was. I'm sure he was. But he's also very entrepreneurial. So, but I'm sure there was some aspect of that. I have a standing conversation I tried to have with him once. He just wasn't able to because he was in India and we were on a call. So I have a standing conversation to dive even deeper into why the heck did he tell me that? Because I had some answers from the past. But he's like, I got more to tell you. I'm like, all right, great. And he never tells me, like, he never even speaks like that. Most of what I learned growing up from him was by observing him. And that'll get to kind of some of the answers that for some of the questions you had. So he told me that when I was 4. Then as I grew up, he told me get married early and have kids early. And that was probably 10, 12, 13. So I started dating my wife when we were 15. I had kids.
It's interesting that
fairly
you were
early.
so
Yeah.
susceptible to what your dad was saying, because for a lot of people, they'd be like, "Oh, my parents said this, and I completely rejected it."
I think the age that he started that at was
I was
probably
young enough for
it
you
was
to
like
be very
4-year-old,
susceptible and
4 years old, where you're like, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
But thank you. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I think it's weird. That's a really good one. He gave me so much freedom in every area that these things felt like life lessons that he learned that he's trying to help me have a better life than him, but he didn't overreach. I know that might sound like overreaching, but he didn't, because he's like, look, if this is what you want, here's what I recommend, kind of thing. But he didn't have like all these rules. He just had these things like, hey, I'd like this for you. You should do this. You should do these other things. So now when I talked to him about this, this was many years ago. I was like, I'm not going to listen to you anymore. I did all those things. The kids are not going to listen to you. No one's going to listen to you around here. I already did your thing. So there's no resentment, but like, I don't know the alternative is definitely the truth.
So I assume you're not doing that to your kids, where you're like 4 years old. Okay,
I haven't-
an entrepreneur.
I haven't told them those things because I think we live in a different world where those things are accessible and much easier and don't need the kind of prodding or pushing. But kids wise, like my daughter's 11, my son's 15. I think the environment they were raised in was very much my wife's a founder, I'm a founder, her brother's a founder. one of their cousins is a founder. I don't have any siblings.
Sounds like they might be founders too.
Like if they want to,
Yeah.
right? Like, but the world might be very different, right? Going forward in a bunch of ways by the time they need to figure this out. So I think they observe a lot of things and absorb those things. And that's how kids are. So that's why they say like it's more of the behavior of the parents than it is like the
specific things you prescribe them.
Exactly. So why would I tell them anything? If I live my life the way that I think they should, then all I can do is live my life. So like, but I have a lot of historical, whatever the opposite of baggage is in my life, so that a lot of the crap that a lot of people might be dealing with later, I've already dealt with because we've been dating since we were 15. So all the weird stuff, all the bad habits, all the things like back and forth, or how we operate or how we work together to get stuff done or manage a family is all very clean cut and clear. And there's no arguments about any of that ever. And so they never see us fight. Right. And it's not that we don't disagree, but like we're not disagreeable, either of us. So it's like easy to manage something where we feel differently about something. And they see that. So I don't see them being people who are going to be argumentative and things like that. And they obviously see other people that are like that, because even some parents, they'll argue in front of everyone else and all that stuff. And like, but growing up, I had these rules like that I created by observing my father. So if my kids create rules by observing us, that's the best I got. It's better than even what my dad did trying to tell me those 3 things. But again, he'll explain to me a little more eventually and whatever. But it just sounds like there were things that he felt were important for the day and age that I was living in versus him. And some of them were things he wished he would have done too. Don't get me wrong. But he got married early. He had a kid early enough. But he wasn't an entrepreneur in his mind. But he runs a nonprofit. He's retired. He's busier than when he was working. And he's been running that nonprofit forever. So, while he was working. So he's very entrepreneurial. I think he is an entrepreneur. He would say that too, probably. But he didn't get to be a businessman. I think that's really what he wanted me to be. And he got his wish.
Let's come back to curiosity. So because of your dad's role modeling and your mom's role modeling of researching, and you seeing that you had this mindset of I always need to be curious and to ask why, and sometimes there might be no answers, and that's okay. How can people be more curious? Because the other thing you mentioned is that a lot of people lose their curiosity with time. And that probably happens because of all these different programs that we're constantly running and the boxes that we put ourselves in and the society puts us in. So let's say you wake up and you're like, okay, damn, I'm not curious at all. What do you do to reignite your curiosity?
I think usually people would probably come at it from like, I'm not creative, or I'm blocked, or something like that. And if you root cause that, it goes back to curiosity. It's somewhere you lost. To me, curiosity in this context is the idea that I think in the context that I usually find myself in, curiosity actually involves reserving judgment. So all I would say is just as you're moving through the world, figure out where you're being judgy.
Yeah, one thing that I remember I had a conversation with someone the other day, and they mentioned that our reactions to things are usually our reactions to past projections of
Right.
things that are very similar.
Right.
And so that means that we're not even, I think that kind of goes to being present. That means that we're not completely present with the things that we're experiencing, but our mind is constantly trying to map the things we're experiencing to past experiences. So it's almost like we're living in the in the past and in reactions to past.
That's right.
And we're not open to reliving something and looking at it with a completely fresh perspective and seeing how we actually react in the present moment.
That's why it's not childish curiosity, it's childlike curiosity, right? Because childish generally means childish. But childlike basically means, can you look at something like as if you've never looked at it before, but you've looked at it a billion times? Can you look at your significant other like you've never seen them before? How do you do that? That to me is how you practice curiosity, because that means you're shedding the judgment and assumptions you have about the thing at the moment that you're trying to essentially judge the thing, right?
So how do you shed judgment? It's easier said than done. If someone is super judgmental, like what do they do?
I think you have to figure out, I actually think it starts with understanding where your assumptions are coming from. So as this goes into like work, like here's why I'd rather someone talk than me ask a question. Because if someone talks, I can figure out what assumptions they're making very quickly. And if I know what assumptions they're making, I know what judgments they're making. Because assumptions are what inform the judgment. The judgment is what causes us to have an impression that might be incorrect. So it really goes back to an assumption. So what I'm really trying to do is, what is that person assuming? And I try to do that to myself. So if I look at something, I'm like, oh, works like that, or does this, or even looking at that fireplace, I'm like, oh, where is the way to light the fireplace? Haven't found it yet. Might be over there. But like, I don't need to look at it. I don't need to think about it. But like, can I look at it and be like, what is this thing? Because if I can do that, then I've removed all the assumptions about, oh, it's this thing in this like, wall. The wall has a TV. There's a fire. Like, how do you practice being able to look at something
and figure out how it works from first
and the
principles.
basic building blocks, right? And I think like that is the type of exercise, and that's like very hard to do because I look at it and I still think fireplace. I don't look at it and I think bricks and granite and all that. But if you can start thinking like that, then you're taking it back down to its bare bones, and then you can have a bare bones understanding of something.
I want to bring your curiosity about yourself and how you work to the famous incident that you had with Hiten bombs and realizing that you kind of blew up in a way your own company that you were running, and the fact that you were constantly bringing people new ideas and defocusing them. How come you didn't realize that earlier, given your interest in self-understanding?
Yeah. So I think that the environment you put yourself in and the assumptions you make about that environment are what lead to some of those things that I was experiencing where I would.
And can you paint some more color? Like what exactly was happening and how did you realize?
So at that time, it was my first venture-backed startup, and I had assumptions about what was important. And so what I thought was important was that we were nimble and moving fast and trying things constantly. And that worked for a very long time because we were pivoting and trying to figure out what we had. But then, even though the environment changed, which is we have customers, they're paying and all that, I didn't change. So the environment at first was like exploratory and all that stuff. The environment after was like product market fit, grow the thing. But I kept operating, at least half of my mindset was still in the past. Back to the old points that you made, right? So if that's the case, this is actually why certain people have certain judgments that like I don't think are accurate, but it's like, oh, that founder, and this has happened a lot less now, but oh, that founder is only good at early stage. It's like, not necessarily. That founder might not have actually realized how the environment changed right in front of them because of what they were able to do. You actually want that founder to be able to do the next stages because there's an advantage they're going to have at those if they can figure out what those advantages are. Because instead of experimenting on getting to product market fit, we should have been experimenting on growth a lot more. I just confuse those two things.
Yeah, I feel like the vibe of what you just said is very Courage to be Disliked, which I saw was a book that you found pretty impactful. I generally always believe that in any moment we can change our own mindset and perspective, but there are obviously still innate traits and characteristics that will be an obstacle to how that change might happen. Did you have all of those realizations before you read Courage to be Disliked, or was that like a very impactful read that made you change?
This is actually the weirdest thing about metacognition or some of the stuff we've talked about. If I've thought enough about something over time, so these little processes, then when I read something like that, it's basically synthesizing the things I believed already, right? Or giving me names to things. So that's kind of what happened with that book, which is like it gave me name for things that I couldn't quite understand. Because my great relationships map to very clear delineation of their task and my task, which is a big part of the book.
Yeah, to give a bit of a summary on the book, the one of the things is, as you said, what is your task and what is their tasks. It kind of also reminds me of, do you know Mel Robbins, the podcast host? She has the let them theory, and the let them theory is kind of the same thing, where you just let other people react to the things the way they want, and that is not your responsibility to impact their reaction in any way. Your responsibility is to do your thing, be yourself, and just seeing how the world reacts and adjusting your part of the job if you don't like the reaction. But you're not going to impact how other person is going to react. What are they going to say? Are they going to like you? Are they going to dislike you? So just complete waste of your energy and time.
Yep. And so when that clicks for you, you realize that you should be focused on your tasks. So and the whole theory is that the reason we have relationship dysfunction is because I'm focused on their task instead of my task, and we're mixing those, or they're focused on my task, right? The framework I have that I got to before the book was Batman and Robin. So the example I like to give is, we bought a house and we were remodeling it. Took a couple of years. This is my wife and I, and she stepped in the house 700 times. I stepped in the house 20 times over 2 years. Guess who was Batman? Which basically means like the analogy plays out. I've taught so many people this analogy, but it's like, if you're doing something with someone else, usually it's a significant other, a relationship, you got to Batman and Robin as many things as you can. It's not like, and someone told me, oh, so they're always Batman? I'm like, no. Depending on the task or the job or the thing, someone's Batman, someone's Robin. Because if there's two Batmans, nothing's going to get done because they're both going to try to do the wrong things because there's no alignment. If there's two Robins, nothing's going to get done because they're both thinking they don't need to do it. If there's a Batman, it's very clear you're Batman and you're Robin. Now, what happens when Robin tries to go to Batman and give Batman an opinion about what Batman's doing, and Batman doesn't want that opinion? Batman gets mad at Robin because what is Robin doing? They're encroaching on Batman's task.
I feel like that's also a common argument with childcare. I was just talking to a friend the other day, and she was complaining about the fact that, she's the one managing their au pair. And then she had a really big argument with her husband about the fact that she's not managing the au pair also. So, okay, so how do you reconcile
two people managing the au pair? It's clearly that she's Batman, but she doesn't want to be Batman, or she has a problem with her significant other being Batman or being Robin. But it's very likely in that scenario, she is probably the one that should be Batman anyway.
Right.
And there's some other problem she's trying to solve for.
With the supplement.
And this is what I found in those situations where he's supposed to be Batman, but he's not being Batman. That's usually what that boils down to. So many relationships I've helped at least understand what's going on with the framework.
Okay, so then let's say you understand the framework. I think this is a really good segue into co-founder relationships. So you had your first co-founder was your
brother-in-law.
Brother-in-law. And you guys started a company around like 15, or you were both 16, 17?
He was 11, I was 15 when we met. I graduated college, and he was graduating high school.
Wow.
And that's when we started the company.
And then you were also running a company with your wife, and I guess still are, and then you had another co-founder. So, okay, for anyone listening, how should people approach partnerships?
Batman and Robin. Purely like the way I've made it work with so many different types of people throughout the years is getting clear about that delineation.
So give me more specifics. How do you get clear? There is, obviously a lot of perspectives on doing co-founder dating, realizing what everyone's values are, what their strengths, what their weaknesses.
So I'll talk about two different things. The first thing I'll talk about is how to find a co-founder, because I think that kind of is where you were going, right? Then I'll talk about how to work with a co-founder, because I think those are two separate things. Finding one, there's just one exercise that you need to do if you're looking for one. I'm going to assume you found someone who might be someone you want to work with. So I'm just going to start there, because we don't need to talk about how to get there, because there's a lot of ways to get there. There's infinite ways to get there, actually. But once you're there and you're deciding to work together, people do things like work trials together, like work together for a few. All that is fine. But the fundamental thing that every time I tell this to someone and they do it, they're like, oh, thank you. It either saved me or it helped me, and we're aligned. And all it is I'll tell you also the most common one that comes up as an issue. So most common, I'll go there first. The most common one that comes up, which cracks me up every time, is they both want to be CEO.
Oh my God, that's such a common thing lately.
Let me tell you how that comes up though, and how I try to get them to pull it up earlier. Both people independently write.
It's probably like an article of some sort.
They just write independently without each other seeing it what they want. What do you want? What do you want out of working together? And just write that up. You could ask yourself other prompts or whatever, but the general thesis is independently write down what you both are trying to get out of this business. Because then you'll even find things like, oh, that person wants to sell it. That person actually wants to build something so big it goes public. Or they both want to be CEO, which is, again, absurdly common. And that's usually a non-starter once that shows up. Like, you're done. You're usually done. Because then it's like we both want to be the person that the buck stops at. And co-CEOs rarely will really work. But if you go dig into the co-CEO relationship, it's exactly this Batman and Robin thing. One person is focused on this, other person is focused on that. So, it's funny, like, I also break the rules a lot, but like someone joined a new project. So I also have a side note. To me, these initiatives are actually, like, these startups or businesses are actually project, product, business. And you're just going through those stages. And yeah, product market fit, all that exists, but it's actually those stages that I think about. So I have a project that I've been working on that's turning into a product that we're trying to fast track into a business. I had someone join, and literally the first call with the team, I was like, hey, and I just said this, if you have a question or any of that, you can ask both of us. But like whatever she says, like, it might as well be how you folks have been treating me as if I said it, right? And I just called it that. And the reason for that is in that project or in that product now or that business, I'm not spending all my time on it. She is. And I trust her so much where she can Batman the whole thing and I wouldn't care. Because she knows where to come back to me or whatever. But this is a person, and this is another side note. I have a few people like this, but this is a person that for the last 10 or 12 years, we both try to talk to each other every week for about a half hour. Just because we're friends. And I have a few people that I've done that with. And like at this point, a few weeks ago, late last year and earlier this year, it just ended up working out where I get to work with her. So, but I was very explicit. But in my mind, and again, the reason I say that might be opposite of this Batman and Robin thing is like they could go to either of us. But what they might not know is that she's Batman in my head. So if she says something and like I disagree, like I have to convince her or I have to just go with it. But that's my mental model because I know her attention on that project is going to be much greater than mine right now. And I already know her well enough that like it's not a problem of like we don't have the how can I put it? We don't have any work to do to understand each other or context. Zero.
So coming back to how someone finds a co-founder, the most important thing is for you and them to write out what they want.
Individually.
And then if it's a no-go, if it's a co-CEO situation or someone wants to build a small business, the other person wants to scale up a company, are there any other red flags?
Those are the big ones. You're just trying to find where you disagree and trying to work through the disagreements. The CEO thing is rarely a disagreement that can be worked through. What the goal of this business is commonly you can work through that because you don't know if that outcome is possible, either of them. So it doesn't really matter. And you're more just trying to get aligned on what type of business are we building. And that is usually somebody just having a misconception about the world. Like they don't understand IPOs are hard, or they don't understand you don't design a company to sell it usually unless you're an expert at that. Things like that. But you want to, people don't tease any of this out, and instead they do the work trials and build the product. And then they realize this crap later when they got to figure out the titles or something else. And it's like, wait, what are our actual shared goals and objectives, and really also shared values. And the hacks people do is like, I'll work with my best friend, or even the hack I did. We spent 10 years, more than 10 years, half hour every week. We tried to make the meeting. So at least 30 to 50 times a year.
And that was just like friends meeting. You guys were updating
talking about
each
work,
other.
talking about whatever. I helped her out. She helped me out, whatever.
And then obviously then it's an inception of really deep trust and actually understanding someone. Let's talk about that. How do you build up trust with someone, and how do you get to know someone really well to, I guess, deepen that trust?
It's funny. This is a good one, and I'll give you one funny or interesting story. I have relatives in India, like a cousin, uncle, like uncle, relative, blood relative. My great uncle's kid. Best way to say it. So my dad's cousin, actually. And they're extremely successsul business people, like extremely successful.
Runs in the family.
Maybe way more successful than I. In that context. And I asked him when I was like 15, hey, what do I need to know? Trust takes 10 years. I was like, crap. But every part of me didn't want to agree or believe that. But every time I think through that, it just keeps coming back to what he said, which is like, it takes 10 years. So if I know it's going to take 10 years, then I'm really just trying to figure out who is worthy of that investment. And I don't mean like me, like it both sides, right? So which relationships are worthy of that investment? So for example, an engineer I've worked with, we hired him in like 2010 or 2011 at KISSmetrics, my first venture-backed company. He worked with me until we sold to Dropbox, and he's still there. And he'll be there for however long. If I can help it, I would love to work with him again. That relationship is now 12, 13, 15 years, easy 14, 15 years. And I hired him because of some mutual friend we had who was like, hey, you're in the analytics space. Hey, he might be interesting for you because he knows databases, blah, blah, blah. I used to work with him. And then I met him, and he came on as an analytics engineer. He ended up being the head of product and engineering at KISSmetrics. And he was our CTO at Nira. He came on a little bit later, but he was working on one of my other projects at the time. I trust him. It felt like it didn't take 10, but it probably took 10. And I think part of that is like, you find people's patterns, and you find this, you find all that through longevity, like through hitting reality. Hacking that is possible, but that's usually because there's a fundamental value system that is so aligned about the work actually that you don't need the time. So with Marie, my co-founder at Nira, there was a fundamental value system that somehow in some way that we aligned with and we got along. And those two things are what hacked that process of trust. But it was a constant trust exercise while with Steve, the CTO guy, there's no exercise. Like there's even a few patterns we figured out that we're going to change if and when we work together again. There were 2 times it happened, and those were so critical that now we both are watching for it. And it was just something in our thinking. It had nothing to do with the relationship. It was just more like, if we thought differently those 2 times, those things we were working on would have been more successful. And like we figured that out. But like, to be honest, I think it's trust, but it's really identifying those kind of things which you can't do without having enough shots on goal. And if you get lucky, and the thing works, great. You learn less. That's the funny thing. When things work quickly, you learn a lot less. Like a heck of a lot less. Yeah. In fact, like when something works quickly, the amount of effort I put into figuring out why it worked is way greater than when it works slowly, for obvious reasons. But the reason I do that, which I don't see enough people doing, is because if it worked quickly and I don't know why it worked, I can't repeat it. 2, I don't understand it. 3, I think I'm screwed because I basically lost something. I don't want to lose. And if you look out there in the world, a lot of founders are one-hit wonders and they're not able to get past that. And it's simply because usually when you look at their history, they got there too fast and they didn't understand how they got there or why they got there. Or it was too easy. But if it's easy, that's good. Life is good. That's luck. But then you got to figure out what is it that made that good or made that work so fast. Not even made it work so fast, just what made it work. Because fast is like there's tailwind, there's a bunch of luck, and you have to discount a lot of that and be like, what is it that we controlled that made this happen? And you could learn nothing, but then you can't repeat it, which means the work is harder next time. And most people don't internalize this.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like being really fast at making things work is it's not a blessing in disguise, whatever the opposite of it is, because then you're like, oh, you didn't build up a lot of the necessary skills to then repeat the thing. And hopefully you got lucky that the thing worked fast and you're still working on it. You're still reaping the benefits. But if you have to restart, I sometimes think about, there's a lot of people who say that, oh, at school so-and-so was really hard, so I had to apply a lot of grit and work ethic to really figure it out. And as someone who I've always been like most good at most, like 80%, getting 80% somewhere. I've been good at most things. Yeah, pretty quick. And I'm kind of jealous of people who weren't that quick because there are certain muscles that I feel like I wasn't able to build out. And maybe there are some parts of me that I'm like, maybe I'm not giving myself enough credit, but I think the hardship and grit is really, really important. And having the slowness of the lessons is also important because then we kind of are dissatisfied when progress happens too quickly and it's not completely in our own hands because then we externalize it as like, oh, I got lucky, this has happened, and you feel like you didn't really actually put the work in.
Yeah, and so that's why assessing it will help you see what work you did put in and help you see like how to repeat it, whether it's speed or just repeat success. Because at the end of the day, once you're successful, you want to repeat it. Yeah. If you got there quickly, you're not even able to understand how to repeat it, which means if you can't understand that, there's a lot of scenarios you can't. You have to rebuild the muscle. You can't just ignore the fact that you got there quickly and you don't understand it. You have to actually internalize that and build the processes you might not have that you might have thought you needed to, but you didn't because it happened quickly. Here's like the most damning thing I can say about this. Every single time I hear about people interviewing at the fastest growing companies, every single time there is amounts of dysfunction that would not work if the thing wasn't working and didn't have product market fit so quickly.
Yeah, because growth begets everything.
Yeah. Like, and most of the time, like you dig in, I'm like, wait, is there excellence anywhere from a proper standard?
Or did they just get lucky and the market was?
If they're good, there's excellence in one area. If they're not good and they just got there, there's excellence nowhere. And like, it's kind of crazy because those companies, if you think about that, they look the same as a dysfunctional company that's not successful. So what's the difference? There isn't any. They got lucky, but they did something to get that luck. I'm not discounting whatever their thing is, but do they know? And that's why when I find the one excellent piece, I'm like, all right, they know that butters their bread. That's what I call it.
Okay, I want to come back to co-founders. So obviously a lot of it is people and people's alignment. I feel like now though, for anyone who's looking for, say, tech co-founder, it's harder. And I want to hear whether that's...
You mean like someone like you that's technical and writes code or like...
No, just like harder to find someone who's down to start a business just because there is so many companies out there. Yeah, it's much easier to maybe go and make money at one of the growing startups. Like, why take the risk? Do you think it's harder to find a co-founder than, say, 10, 15 years ago? Because then it was a risky bet, and now it's still a risky bet, but there's a lot of other bets you can take with your career. Because I hear so many people complaining about how hard it is to find a co-founder. You go to your friends, but the friend is already working at a job they like, or they're thinking of a job that pays them much more than taking the risk. What would you recommend people who are in that spot?
I haven't met co-founder relationships that last where they don't like working together. And so my argument about this would be first breaking the assumption that you need a co-founder.
Sure.
right? Like, I don't actually think you need a co-founder. And now the world of tech has invented a founding member.
Right, right.
So if I were to start from scratch, I would convince myself that I don't need a co-founder, but I want founding team members. And so then the bar for what that person can do with you is much lower. Because usually a co-founder means, like, in the best sense, a lot of what you can do, they can do in areas that are not either of your expertise, which is a little bit of a nuance. Or they're both of your expertise, but you both know that. So then you fill in the deficiencies with the team, right? Which is what Marie and I did. We're both business people. Neither of us write code. And we knew consciously that we were both able to do the same things for the most part. Yeah, we had expertise here and there. Like, if there was legal or compliance or anything, that was her thing, because Batman and Robin, like, you don't want me doing that because she's better at it and she likes it. Well, she wouldn't say she likes it, but she's very good at it. And her natural gravitas is towards things like that and systems and legal. Like, she will read every word in a contract. I've never met anyone that reads every word in contracts. That was before AI, but even with AI, she'll still read every word, even using AI. That's a person that should do that, right? So my point in that is that what I mean by liking working together is actually more of like, do the two puzzle pieces fit together? And are you getting all the other puzzle pieces to have a clear picture of what the team looks like and what they're going to achieve? And I think a lot of people don't enter these relationships and start these businesses with enough consciousness of who and what, not who, but what do we need to win? And do we have it? And that's actually what you want to do with a co-founder, right? Like, do you have what you need to win with the people that are around the table that are working on this thing? And when you start logicking that out, the easier answer is no co-founder, and find people who you can literally pay to work as early team members that are part of the founding team. And yeah, be generous on equity and this and that, but you're not picking someone or finding people who would co-found with you. You're finding people who have functional roles that you know you need in the business and can deal with the ambiguity of a startup.
Let's talk about winning in 2026. Have a lot of things changed in your own mind for how startups, founders should approach winning now with, the boom of AI, the tools, etc.? Then, like, are fundamentals still true, or have they changed a lot?
Yeah, I'll give you three different perspectives. So the first perspective is my classic one on this, that so back in the day, I learned lean startup from Eric Ries and Sean Ellis. I'm adding Sean Ellis because I think a lot of the principle that he shared around how you learn faster in that loop, because the loop is like build, measure, learn, and you're going through that loop as fast as you can. His learn part was very strong, and more than just tactical or strategic, because he was a marketer coming in thinking about it. The reason I'm mentioning that is because Eric was an engineer, Eric Ries, or is an engineer and founder. And so he was on the build side, and measuring is like a combo of both, let's say. So there's build, measure, learn. So the number one thing of three on what's changed and what I think we need to do is that there's this loop. Whether you believe in lean startup or not, every business is going through that loop. They're building something, they're measuring it, and they're learning, and then they're building more, right? So now if you think about that loop, what's happened with AI? The first thing that's happened with AI is we can build more. You could argue and tell me, no, we can build faster too. Okay, we can build.
That was my argument.
Yeah, but even in the lean startup, it says build faster, measure faster, learn faster. Like, that's actually the words. Fine. You could build more and you could build faster. I'll take the win there. But just because that's faster does not instantly make measuring faster or learning faster. So I think the issue we're dealing with is this has gotten faster and we can do more. These other areas haven't yet. And the smartest people that understand this that I've seen have made the learn faster.
Yeah, I feel like with AI, you can learn faster too, right?
Not to the same extent as coding faster.
Who are the smartest people who have figured it out?
So the folks at Gamma have basically, there was one tweet that was based on the podcast that the founder was on with Lenny. And it really got me because it really demonstrated this loop and how they're going through it fast. So what they said is in one day, they can validate or invalidate a new idea. And the way they do that is someone has an idea, prototype it in the morning, build it, go do user testing and stuff like that, which is measuring and learning it, and get data by the end of the day on a new idea.
So what did they do to learn faster? They just are in the mindset that we have to learn faster, and they optimize their processes. That's
because I think they realized this problem in whatever way they did.
Yeah, now we have a bunch of shit that we built, but
we
the
can build
learning is now
faster, but
stacked
can't
up.
learn. Yeah, you got it. So then you have a backlog of learning. But before you had a backlog of building. You still do. I don't think the code faster, I think we're still at code more, not code faster. But that's okay. Like it just looks like it's faster, but we have there's a lot of brittleness, hallucinations, issues with how we do it. I mean, again, not to pick on them, but I like picking on them, I guess, for now. Claude. They launched Claude Cowork.
Oh, yeah.
They built it in 10 days. It was vibe coded. I call it that, but essentially. But Claude Code wrote 100% of the code. Guess what? As a user, it shows.
Yeah, I saw a couple of articles of what tasks does Cowork can actually get done, and there's a lot of errors or a lot of misunderstandings.
It shows that AI built the code. Whether that's good or bad for Anthropic, completely different story. But when I think about it that way, it
there's
demonstrates
marketing
the
and there's
problem.
products, yeah.
Guess what? They built faster. They didn't learn faster. They didn't. You could argue they did. Oh, they shipped it.
They're learning, but not faster.
In a lot of ways without shipping it the way they did. I would have I would have knowledge worker previewed it or some kind of preview like that instead of the way they did it. It is really, I'll stop on picking on them, but it almost does them a disservice. It's basically saying that Claude Code writes code like this, but it writes it fast. Okay, now what are you going to do? And that's not even speaking to the tech debt in their core product. You could feel the tech debt in their core product if you're a product person, you use it. This is why I turned. They don't want to build this for me. It doesn't feel like it. Well, ChatGPT does. What am I going to use? And Gemini, they're just going to throw features at it because that's Google's way to kind of feature their way out of the problem, very Microsoft style now, which is fine because I'll use all the tools they give me for free or paid or whatever because they're very powerful, but they're not the same as these. So I would just say that some companies have internalized this, others haven't. And that leads to my second point. So I think the second point is that the way we think about speed is almost upside down. So, and it goes back to the loop and all this stuff, but I think it's very impressive that Anthropic shipped Claude Cowork in 10 days. I think it's completely impressive. What's not impressive is the stuff I said, right? So we're now at a weird place where we can ship more. But if it's faster, that means that we're able to learn faster, but then what we do about it matters. So I think our discipline in product development, and this is going to sound really weird, has gone down as more things are able to be shipped, when I think the discipline should go up as more things are being shipped. And the discipline is around, hey, learn faster. But point number one is basically just because we can build faster doesn't mean we can learn faster. We need to fix that. That's one thesis for this year. The second thesis is everyone needs to ship a heck of a lot faster than they are today because we ship or we die. So I think last year proved, and the company I want to give a lot of credit to here is Perplexity, because they shipped their brains out, is what it felt like, to the point where everyone had to react. The reason ChatGPT Atlas exists
because
Comet existed first. And yeah, it's not like this idea was novel by any of them, because Daya and the browser company, fine. But look at that. And now what? Does these browsers matter? Should ChatGPT have Atlas? Should Perplexity have Comet? Taking a if I were the founders, if I were the product people, I would consider shutting those two things down because it was built fast. It was built in last year's world of building fast. This year's world of building fast is different. Build fast and make it valuable. Last year was just build fast because Perplexity was never trying to make anything valuable at the time. It felt like, at least it felt like they were in a weekly product cycle where they would invent something on Monday and ship it by Friday or ship it by the next Monday. And they were going in this loop. That's what it felt like. I have no idea what was going on. But as a user, it felt like that. In the market, it felt like that. But I think that pushed everyone to the point of trying that. And I think we don't just have to try that. We just have to do it. So at Crazy Egg, we ship something big every month. And big meaning either it can be on Product Hunt or it's a significant feature for existing customers. And that's just a mandate. And yeah, maybe we'll miss a month. I hope not. But it's mandate. Last month, we didn't publicly talk about it, but we shipped something very significant to our paying customers. We just didn't want to make it free. So we didn't put it on Product Hunt or make a big deal out of it. Ironically, it's funnels, and it's the same thing we built at KISSmetrics. And this month, we're going to ship something else. If I could help it, I would want to ship that size thing every week. Because if you don't have the attention, you don't get the customer. And that's the world we live in now. It was always like that, but now getting that attention requires you to ship new stuff. Because the only way to get attention is add value. An ebook does not add value. A post on LinkedIn does not add value in this way to a customer or a potential customer. The thing you ship does. Because that's demonstrating that if you're doing it well, which I don't think Perplexity and others did, but we heard you, we learned you needed this, and we shipped it, and here's why we think it's the right thing to ship. I think we need to get that disciplined. So I think we need to ship fast, but we need to go from undisciplined shipping fast to disciplined shipping fast.
So just to reiterate for anyone listening, so point number one, we need to learn faster. Like, sure, we can build faster, but learning is kind of slow. Two, though, is we need to adjust to the speed of how fast we can build things because they're much faster with AI tools.
Right.
What's the third one?
Yeah, the third one is, I think, the third one is more personal to me in what I would say is the state of startup knowledge. And what I continue to see is that all the basics that I thought were codified and deeply understood, when I talk to a first-time founder, they are not. And a lot of the things that I created or guides or internal documents or things like that, I will send to them. Like, hey, here, just do this. Like, don't go talk to 15 people or find some consultant or that. Just go yourself. Do this thing in this document and it'll work for you. That's kind of like somebody, they've seen a few of these for me and somebody's like, oh, that's a secret document network. No, I'm like, it's just the way to get someone to understand something that I feel like they already should have the knowledge that this is the right way, but yet they're questioning it. Not even what I sent them, but just generally, how do I do this? There's answers everywhere.
Why do you think that we haven't caught up to the right way to do things, to all the playbooks?
I don't know if it's caught up or fell behind. Meaning I don't know if we need to, meaning the solution I don't think is catching up because that's what I felt like we had to do back in the day. I think it's relearning.
Well, why did we lose the knowledge then?
Tech became an industry.
Versus a craft?
Yeah. The craft of startups does not exist right now that I can see. Maybe in pockets. The amount of companies that are run by folks that don't know what they don't know is the issue. And the investors aren't telling them. The investors would do it back in the day.
But coming back to growth, though, I guess, yeah, it's important to know things so that you can repeat things. But if you're a startup that's just like, okay, we're growing, we're printing money, why do we need to care to pause and figure out how to do things right? Because they might break at any point of time?
I think it's a good question. I think this goes back to people's mental model And even that thing I said about, pre-product market fit and the shift of the heat and bombs to post, I think what happens is the mindset you use to start the company is not the mindset you need to scale the company. So the mindset they might have used is we can do everything our way. Okay, cool. At some point, your way won't scale. Do you know what areas it won't scale in? Do you know what you need to do to make that thing scale? A lot of the common one is like most of the companies, until they hit like hundreds of people, some of them, not most, they have flat orgs. But then things don't get done. And then they wonder why things didn't get done that felt basic. Well, it's because you made the org flat. And now it's hundreds of people with a flat org with no real key of who reports to whom. There was this concept called holacracy back in the day. People tried all kinds of funky things. And then what are we back to now? A hierarchy, an org chart. And in fact, we should be embracing it even more because there's so much talent out there that fits in the org charts. Why would we tear up the org chart for no reason? Yes, reviews and all that and big company stuff, I'm not into that. But you still need structure, and people need a mental model of who do I go to for X, Y, or Z. You have a flat org, you don't have that. But you can do a flat org for a certain amount of time with a certain amount of people. But that's a good example of like doing things your own way.
It reminds me of a couple of times I listened to the episodes of Acquired that were about older companies, like companies that started 100
Like
years ago.
Intel or whoever.
Yeah, exactly. Or like Costco.
Sure.
And I was like, damn, they innovated on a lot of this org stuff a long time ago. Because I feel like in the Valley, because it's all about innovation of org structure, or how we're going to do a sitting plan, or how we're going to do reviews, the mindset is always be experimenting and innovating. But it is true that there have been very significant learnings throughout like hundreds of years of building companies that actually work, and they're already proven to work. So it's like, why reinvent the wheel? I just caught myself thinking that I didn't know that this has already existed and been proven for years and years, and it's not like a Silicon Valley innovation.
It's having worked at a very large company, very large meaning large, not very large, like 3,000 people. I can totally see and really deeply respect why some people who had experienced that don't like it and don't want to do that in their own companies. But having not had that experience first and instead had the only experience of trying to build my own, I look at what they're doing there and I have a different perspective. You don't want to bias towards thinking that scale causes issues when really environment causes issues, regardless of scale. So there's something that happens in those environments that lead to the hierarchy and the structure being abused. While you could build the same hierarchy and structure and not abuse it and make sure the culture is right. So you go back to environment and culture versus I'm going to have a flat company or a flat org. Because at some, like, here's the problem. Like, everyone wants to make more money. Like, not everyone, but like in general, if you're working in tech and you're an employee and you have a role, you want to make more money. The clarity of how you do that
To move up the ladder.
is really important. I felt like working at a larger company, too many of my conversations with my colleagues were around these kind of things because they lacked clarity even with all the structure that existed, or they didn't like the clarity. It's a different story. Right? They didn't like how it worked. Okay, cool, start your own company. It's fine. I did that, right? So I think like when you think about it like this, we throw away things for the wrong reasons. And one of the things is org and hierarchy and all that. But I also studied org behavior in college. I made my own major. This is things I think about probably more than most founders, simply because like it just comes naturally now. But like, I used to love to say this. I could walk in a company and walk up to someone's desk and find out everything about the culture by asking them one question. And that question was simply, what are you working on and why are you working on it? So,
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many people don't have a clear answer, especially the why part.
Or they say because my boss said so, which is fine, but a certain type of culture versus because this is the biggest problem in the business and this is the metric I can move to help with that. And so I'm focused on this thing that helps with that. That is a better answer. That is the answer I wish more people would have in the world. Because if they have that answer, then we know there's less dysfunction at organizations.
I want to come back to you deciding to take a job and selling your company to Dropbox. But while we're on the topic of, being a founder and how the world has changed, how should someone listen and decide what to spend their attention on? They might want to start a company. They might not want to start a company. Like in a world that's changing so fast and there's so many things happening, how do you decide what to spend your time on? And what advice can you give to listeners?
I think the micro way that I would describe how you discover the answer is probably what I would suggest. And then we can talk a little macro or broader. But the high level, before I get into that, is it has to be contextual. So that's why the micro thing I would say is, and I think you and I have talked about this, but it's like, at some point I realized that like, I need to focus on what gives me energy. So all you want to do really to first answer that question is like, what gives you energy and what takes it away from you? And also like in some cases, what's neutral? There really isn't neutral because good is neutral. Yeah. So what gives you energy? What takes it away? Because sitting here is neutral. But am I, like after this, am I going to have more energy? Yeah. I can already tell you the answer is yes, because I've spent time with you and I like talking to you and we like hanging out and talking about this stuff. And now we're doing it on camera. Fantastic, right? And that's good. But I know that. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I said yes, right? While other things like convincing legal to let me ship a product did not give me energy. So you know what I did at Dropbox? They were already into this and kind of doing it, but I was a product manager. But I took myself out of that room and I made the engineers talk to the legal and compliance people because I realized, one, it doesn't give me energy. As in, I have no problem with the legal people. I'm happy to jam on it, but it's not doing anything for me, which means it's probably not going to help the business. So if I can get out of that, I will. But what I also realized, and this is what I mean by the nuance, I didn't care about why it wasn't giving me energy because that wasn't as important. I was like, okay, how do I solve this problem so I don't have to deal with it? What I realized is the vast majority of what legal says, engineering has to do. And the way I was operating engineering, at least as a PM, because I had no reports, but the way I was like working with them was they have ownership. I wanted our team, the engineers, to have full ownership over the code they wrote. So the way I did that is I got out of the way and they knew when to come to me when they needed a decision they couldn't make on their own. That's generally how I like to manage, but that was kind of like the situation that I sort of developed. But that micro like thinking, and I say it's micro because you asked a macro question, but I would go micro because that's how you determine those things that give you energy and don't. Like, for example, some people are like, I need passion for the idea or whatever. For me, it's actually, and passion is probably the wrong word, but I need conviction in that the people I'm working with can help us achieve our goals. I don't care what the goal is. I don't care what the business is. I don't care what the idea is. If I feel good about who's around the table and our ability to work together, I'm in. I don't care what it is. We could be building anything. That's kind of my mental model. But I know what gives me energy, which is the people I work with. Nothing gives me more energy than the people I work with. And I know that. But that's me. So if you just figure out what gives you energy, what doesn't, like some people are like, I just want to code all day. More power to you. If you can find a situation where you can do that and that gives you energy, that's what you should focus on. So I think as humans, we have, most of us, a lot of us have so much privilege, so to speak, where we can make these choices like this, where we can decide to analyze this and make a decision and do more of what gives us energy, if not just do only what gives us energy. So I think I'm trying to optimize for doing either neutral things, which is nothing, or going straight to what gives me energy. So the second I see it, you could call it vibes, you could call it whatever, but second I start feeling those bad vibes or I'm losing energy, I'm like, okay, what do I need to change? And it wasn't that the legal people were giving me bad vibes or anything. It just never gave me energy to like debate them or do that. But I was always willing to make a choice if they had a choice for us to make. But usually it's like copy or this or that or really small things that like I can't even help with much because it's dictated, which means the engineer just needs to go implement it and a box is checked. If there were deeper things, they'd come to me. But this whole system was out of, hey, that doesn't give me energy. And I used to think, oh, or not me, my co-founder actually came to me like, oh, you don't like them? I'm like, no, I actually love those legal people. I love all that. But like the process doesn't give me energy. And someone better than me can do it, which is the person who wrote the code, who is working on the thing that needs to go appease these people. We all do, and make it so we can ship the thing we want to ship. So that's just a very work example, but like you put that example around everything. You even think about like a conversation you're having with your partner. Is it giving you energy or not? It's your partner, so there's probably some kind of rubber band leeway, right? Stretching leeway. But at the end of the day, the more conversations you have that don't give you energy, the more you're probably not going to like that person over time. Like, I'm just being honest, right? And if it gives them energy, doesn't give you energy, that's a mismatch. Because a lot of times these conversations give one person energy, not the other. And it's not a fight. But people don't realize it. And then later on, they part ways. But it was usually because of the erosion of that.
Yeah, 100%. I think it goes back to what we started with, just the time to reflect on how I feel about certain things,
Right.
certain people, things that I'm doing. So to summarize, to figure out what you want to do day to day is try a bunch of things to figure out, are they giving you energy? Are they not giving you energy? Is it neutral? And then do more things that give you energy.
Exactly.
What about macro?
I think macro, and this is my third thing. We didn't even get into the third thing.
No,
fully.
we did get, okay, we
Did we?
partially
Okay,
got into
partially.
the thing.
It does relate to the third thing. I think the macro is that.
Oh, the third thing was about the startup fundamentals.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
There you go. So this is adjacent.
This is the fourth thing.
Yeah, it's not the fourth thing, but it's adjacent. But it was what I wanted to get into with that, which is relevant here, which is like basically, the amount. I don't think, and I've had a computer since I was 8, and I don't think I don't have the why or the answer, but I think we are generally all dealing with an existential crisis
100%.
that nobody understands. So when you ask that question about macro, or when I go macro and I try to break it out to micro and macro, I would say there is no macro. There's no macro right now because there is an unprecedented amount of change that is coming. We are uncertain about what's going to change, how it's going to change, and why it's going to change, to the point where all we're doing, the people who have the means, are investing in it in one way or another. Whether it's the companies investing all the data center stuff, the chips.
It's almost like investing into dropping off the cliff.
Even earlier today, I was talking to a friend, and he's like, everyone except one investor of mine doesn't understand why I'm burning cash on AI to build AI into our products. I'm like, yeah, well, that investor probably doesn't understand what I'm saying here, which is it's so existential. Either you invest in that or you're investing in nothing. In tech, you're either investing that or you're investing in nothing. That could mean that your product has nothing to do with AI, but the way you're running your business has everything to do with AI.
Yeah,
That's just where we're at.
Yeah.
Right? So if that's the case, then we don't know what we don't know. And no one knows. I mean, we have investments like in the world, in nuclear now, in chips. Like the president is coming out and saying, no, your electric bill won't go up. Like, what? Like Microsoft's coming out and saying, no, we won't let your electric bill go up. Like, these are the things that are, wait, what? Like think about it. Like, you're talking about electricity and corporations sucking up so much electricity that the constituents in the country are worried about the electricity bill. Could you have predicted that 3 years ago? I don't know anyone who could have. And that's just like one real nitpicky thing I'm going after. But like, how many of those exist right now? So how much uncertainty does all that kind of stuff create? So I think the idea, like, I honestly think anyone who has been a founder, this is why a lot of the founders are coming back, I think, and doing stuff, because we are very good at dealing with change. If you've done it once and you see what you're seeing out there right now, and you're like, oh, change? Bring it. right? You just have to have the click of why. Because you might be retired, you might be like Sergey, who needed someone to tell him, hey, you're an engineer, you're a computer scientist, you're a founder, but you're a computer scientist first. What the hell are you doing sitting on the sidelines? What a kick in the ass. Like, I gotta say, right? I mean, I assume it happened because he said it happened, but like, man, if these people are starting company, or not starting, but are investing their time in their businesses like they haven't for forever, what are all of us doing? Like, what do they see that we don't see? I think it's very simple. Founders are very good at change. So we should be doing things where we are trying to figure out what the changes that's happening and make impact somewhere. But where that is or whatever, I think you have to find out in the micro way, because there's so many options and there's so much change. And it's likely that, like, for example, even with Claude, like the co-work thing, like, a lot of people have already came out and said, oh, there's so many startups that are killed because of that thing. Yeah, but they built it in 10 days. If your startup is killed because of something Anthropic could build in 10 days or vibe code in 10 days, you have a problem. You didn't know what you were doing in the first place. I'm sorry. There's caveats and there's edge cases where it's a real problem because you're building the exact thing. Fine. That's a different problem, but it's still a problem. Maybe you shouldn't have been building that thing. But like, yeah, like that's the world we live in. And that's Anthropic. Like, we used to say that about companies like Google when they ship something. Oh no, this is Anthropic. Like, they're not that old. Yeah, they're massive. They're one of the top companies on the planet right now, but they're not that old. Why are we scared of them? They don't know anything special. Like, really, they're not scary. I mean, legit, that company's not scary, but like, why are we saying that? Oh, social media and Twitter and the amplification of whatever. Okay, fine. They haven't killed anyone. They're not going to kill anyone. Like, we all have, like, if anything, like, again, I'm very bullish on AI, as a lot of people are, for reasons that are like, look, if Google is putting AI in front of consumers, and ChatGPT is, or OpenAI is, and Anthropic is, that's only good for us. Because that means more people are getting used to how this stuff works.
For anyone who is not in a founder mindset and is actually scared of change, because that is a lot of people too, how do you stay grounded in so much uncertainty?
Okay. So the most cliche thing I can say is focus on what you can control. I think the reason founders are good at change is because they've gotten
Good at controlling a lot of things.
At figuring out what they can control, figuring out what they can't control, and figuring out what they could control. The could control part is a secret. Cannot, easy. Could is where you go, oh, if I do this and that and this, the scheming entrepreneur, all of us, but then I can control that thing. Sure. That's the art of entrepreneurship, is figuring out what you can actually change to make it so you can control it. So that would be my like sort of way of thinking about it, which is like, hey, look, if you focus on what you can control, then you're not going to be so scared of everything. If that changes, hopefully you discover a way to kind of iterate and improve that, right? So that's my one answer. I think the broader question that I would have for someone who's feeling like that is, why are you feeling like that? And then I would get into all the stuff of like, well, again, just to go there for a second, when was the first time you felt like that? And I would just walk through like, what is it?
What was the trigger?
What is the
exactly
assumption?
happened?
What is the story? What is the trigger? Because as much as we believe everything's going to change, I'm sitting on a couch in a place that that
hasn't changed. It's like, where's my flying car? Nothing changed in the physical world.
The microphones are better. Cool.
The cameras are better.
Yes, they are amazing. What has changed?
Right. Fundamentals haven't really changed.
We still have to live our lives, still have to eat food, we still have to survive, we still have to make money for now. Yeah, there's people saying we might not have to make money in the future, but
oh, really? Is that happening?
the AGI, what is it?
The abundance.
UBI, Universal Basic Income. Hey,
Hasn't happened yet.
Someone else's problem to figure out. The way I think about it is, if there's line of sight to that, great. Otherwise, why are we worried about it? I can't control that.
Right. Okay, let's come back to Hiten's journey. So why did you decide to go to Dropbox? And give me some context. So you left Crazy Egg and it was still running to start Nira? Was Nira like a side project?
I left Crazy Egg to start another analytics company called KISSmetrics. So I left back then.
Yeah.
And I haven't worked on it until literally last year.
But was it running still?
Yeah, my wife was running it.
Okay, got it.
So it was running self-funded SaaS business for 20 years.
Wow.
And then basically the main reason we sold the company and wanted to sell it is because we noticed that we were at what I call a peak of value. So it's like a crypto chart. It goes like that, you figure something out, it goes here. If you're at that peak and it's a real peak, you're somewhere in the curve.
Yeah.
And
it's going to drop,
drop, and then you're going to have to find a way to get it back up. And that is every company. And that part is the hardest part. This part we think is the hardest part, but it's when we figure something out and it stops working, or you can just see that. So we were at a peak of value.
And that was KISSmetrics.
No, this was
Nira. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, so what happened to KISSmetrics at that point?
KISSmetrics, we had a journey. I left that company and didn't want to do anything else. We were one of the first to have like privacy class action lawsuits and stuff.
That was when you decided to take your reflection break to figure out what went wrong.
More or less. Yeah. And a CEO took over and stuff like that. I helped replace him as well, and went back in for 6 months and came back out, and then kind of haven't touched the business since. Other people were running it and doing it. It was venture backed. Then I took a few years, and that's when I met my co-founder and we were actually first building, for lack of a better word, a clean competitor. So an enterprise search tool. Yeah. Then we realized that IT and security actually had a bigger problem. It's all pre-AI. And so we started focusing on that. And then that turned into Nira because we rebranded. And then, we were just at a peak of value because the things we were doing were just about to start becoming important to enough companies. And the reason for that is we were basically protecting company documents from unauthorized access. But we built a tool where even if you had 100 million documents, you could see them in our tool as an IT or security person and see all the permissions. And with a couple clicks, you can find 1 million of them, couple more clicks, and you can change all the permissions on them, right? Like if something has a public link, make it restricted, right? Well, AI came around. These chatbots had access to all the documents. So if you're a company that doesn't have transparency, which is most companies on like salaries, then someone could, in theory, type in what's my boss's salary and get an answer if they had access to the wrong documents or documents they shouldn't have access to. So because of what we were building, it really fit in line with what people really, even today, still need before rolling out like AI tools.
But then, so the company reached peak value, but given you were always a serial entrepreneur controlling your own destiny, why did you decide to? Because I'm sure you could have negotiated it such that you didn't have to go work at a company.
I think that...
was it curiosity to explore what big orgs were like?
I think it's very hard to work out at the earlier stages a situation where you're not coming with the company. So that was one thing. So yeah, it might have been doable, but I would have still had to spend some time. So instead, it was just easier to like not make that an issue, right? Because it wasn't like anyone on the other side of the table at the time didn't know that I've never had a job in my life. They all knew it. So no one was coming in like, oh, this crazy person's going to come here and be crazy. They were like, oh, this crazy person's going to come here and they're going to be crazy. And we know why.
We'll figure it out.
Right? But thankfully, I was able to help recruit my boss. I would, I've never worked for anyone again, but I would definitely work for him again. I don't wish that upon him, though. Or
very self-aware.
Or anyone else, but I think we did okay. But like basically, founders don't realize when they're at a peak of value. And when you have investors on your cap table, you can either, say, hey, look, this was an experiment. We're going to keep going and like try to make it big, which we could have done. We had 18 months of runway. But instead, we were like, well, the way the previous year went and the year before that went, pointed to the kind of work we would have to do to transform the business probably once again, to be honest, because at that peak of value, there were just things we had to do to service that even better, make a bigger sink out of it, blah, 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 that we could have done and we were going to do. And those were our plans. But then if someone was going to come along and help us get to some of those goals faster, it made more sense, since the peak of value meant that we were going to be in a slog and we don't know if we'd raise the next round, considering the slog and the way the markets were. And in hindsight, the best decision was actually to sell the company, because so many things collapsed after in the world, and they were already collapsing before because growth was very hard in 2023 because budgets were collapsing at the time. And so an earlier company doesn't have as much stability. We had enough, but not enough to say, hey, if we go the next 18 months, we're going to get a Series B for sure. And so between the peak of value and that calculation, it made more sense.
Yeah, so it was just that self-awareness that it was better to sell.
Yeah, and it's also like doing what's right by everyone around the table, whether it's the investors, the team members, my co-founder, myself, etc. And like that, the funny thing is, when you raise money in this world, so startups, tech, you're supposed to try to make it big. That's the point. Otherwise, go self-fund a company, especially with vibe coding, all that. You could do that and not have to raise any money. But if you raise money, it's go big or go home. And if you don't know that, then you're not going to think about these businesses correctly. So one way would be like, oh, YOLO, let's go to 18 months and just try to figure it out. And no one was going to stop us. They didn't even have the ability to, mostly. Or if we can get the right deal, the right price, the right, reason to sell, whether it gets realized when you're over there is another crapshoot. But the right reason, which we're all right, then like if we found an opportunity to do that, we should do that. So that's kind of the full calculation
Picture
that happened. But really, it's just peak of value. If you're at a peak of value, your job should be try to capitalize on that peak of value, regardless of anything. Like even if you want to go public, like you're at a peak of value, like you should entertain like what are you worth, or what can you get away with? Of course, if you have high enough conviction or have a calculation where like, hey, I think we can get past it, sure, go for it. Like we had ideas. We probably had a 50-50. My co-founder might say less because she's more conservative, but I think it was a 50-50.
that makes sense.
Especially knowing what I know now. Like more conviction on certain things,
Okay, I in the interest of time, I really want to dive into the topic of personality tests, since we haven't, and that's a very interesting topic. So I was very surprised to find out that you were really into human design, which I feel like is kind of niche, and then Enneagram. Also, tell me more about why should someone care about these frameworks and how to effectively utilize them for your own self-improvement.
I think people who have very clear goals that they've had for forever and don't have a reason to deviate don't need any personality tests or any of that, because I would make an argument that they might not have much of a reason to try to understand themselves because they are probably not going to perceive a problem.
But I feel like sometimes goals change. You might feel like you have very clear goals up until a certain time, and then something happens, and then you start questioning. So I think the start questioning is when you go down personality test.
I just want to make that clear because people listening might not realize why they don't care about this.
Or maybe this makes me think of, if something's not broken, why dive into a lot of self-digging.
There's people close to me in various ways that will never care about this stuff. And so I just wanted to address them first. They will just not care. And the only thing I can think of is, or not think of, the reasoning I would have is their goals make it very easy for them to feel like they understand themselves well enough that like they don't need to entertain. But you are right. The second that gets tripped up, this can be helpful.
So on those people, because I'm kind of jealous of the person who's so clear about their goals, are they very, like, are the goals very simple goals, very clear goals, or not really? Like, what's the archetype of that person?
It's really weird. The people I can think of, they know themselves so well that they don't think about knowing themselves. So if you ask them, do you know yourself? They're like, what do you mean? Like literally they can't even compute the question because that's not how
Do you
they
think they
about
know
the world.
themselves? Or do you think they're so convicted that they know themselves, but it's not actually true?
I think that they haven't found a value in knowing themselves better.
Okay. That's fair.
Whether they know, if you find a value,
It doesn't matter.
If you find the value, you're gonna dig in. To your point, like they have a problem, so the value is I got to solve the problem. I got to solve the problem, so they'll find the value in trying things to solve the problem. And this is why people go on the ayahuasca trips, all that kind of stuff, right? Like simple thing, go find myself. It's like you're right here. You don't need to go find yourself. You're right here. You don't need anything. Like anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so for people who are very clear, they know themselves. This is, skip this section, not important. Then for
or
others,
you think you know yourself, or you don't care, right? For this, it's fully fine. So, for in general, this area is very simplistic for me, and again, it probably goes back to personality, which is simple. If I can get information about myself to help me understand myself, I just want that information. I don't really care where it comes from. I don't really care if it's esoteric. I want to try it. I want to see. And if I get value from it, it's my job to get the value. So my co-founder taught me the statement that someone taught her, which is take the best and leave the rest. So Marie taught me that. And like, sometimes someone will say something to me about something. I'm like, dude, just take the best, leave the rest. Like, you don't like what I said, or you don't like some part of it? No problem. Is there some good in there? Yeah. Okay, great. Take that. You want to talk about it? I'll help you. You want to ignore all of this stuff? I don't care. Right? Like, so I think with some of this stuff, folks get very caught up in the, how does this thing know this?
Yeah.
Instead of what can I do with it? And does it resonate? So I think a lot of this, whether it's human design, Enneagram, MBTI, In Color Insight is another one. There's a bunch of these. All of them, in one way or another, help me understand either myself or others. And then as a result of that, help me understand relationships.
And so in your experimentation, your favorite ones are Enneagram and Human Design.
Yes.
And how much time did you spend on each framework that you touched to figure out where there is value? I guess there was some scientific process involved in figuring that out.
No, it was more bumping into things and trying them and seeing if I like them.
What's an example?
Human design.
Like, what's an example of how you would give me an example of something you learned from human design and you running an experiment to figure out?
Oh, got it. I think Enneagram's interesting on this one. So at Dropbox, like, in the internal, we had an operating system thing. So the internal operating system that had an org chart and a bunch of other stuff. There's a field for your Enneagram. Because I think Drew really likes Enneagram. He's an Enneagram 7. I think it's out there.
Oh, I'm an Enneagram 7 too.
And I'm a 9. And my boss is a 5, or was a 5.
Do you believe, just to interrupt you for a second, that you need to look at the primary Enneagram? Because there is like 3 top Enneagrams. Is there any value? Because I'm a primary 7 and then 3 and
wing,
9.
Yeah, a wing, maybe for yourself it's more helpful, but it does help because it helps you see a bias. So you'll bias one way or another, right? And there's also a triad type thing, like a 3, a 6, and a 9. It's funny, my brother-in-law's a 3, my wife's a 6, I'm a 9.
Okay, so Drew really likes Enneagram. So at Dropbox, you guys were really into
So we had Enneagram. So it was like, it wasn't like, I wouldn't say like it was cultural, but I'm sure at some point it was. Because we know his, a lot of people will put theirs, I put mine.
Slack, instead of the, circa 2019 pronouns, you put your Enneagram.
There you go. That's the new thing.
I like that better.
Yeah. And so basically I had ChatGPT set up where I could go and be like, at one point, because my boss is someone I've known for 20 years, the time we would get on a one-on-one or a call was very precious because like we both valued it, even if there wasn't much to say. So we tried to do it, but he was a VP, so it was very hard, right? And I even told his EA at one point, maybe more than once, hey, if it's 1 a.m. on a Saturday and he can make it, I'm fine. Like, I'd love to talk to him. This is one reason I'm here, right? Probably one of the bigger reasons, because working with him was incredible. I learned a lot. And I didn't even think I'd learn anything, not from him, but from generally that experience. Or I didn't think I'd learn things I would take with me in the way that I am, is what I should say.
What was the biggest thing you learned from him?
There's a lot of things I learned from him. I think I learned more about myself from him by him managing me and the way he did, because it helped me understand things about myself that I quite didn't click on. I'll give you a couple examples. One I was getting into, which was at one point our one-on-ones, like we didn't have them consistently. And there is one mantra, which is like, if you're managed by someone and you're not having one-on-ones, one mantra is like, oh, they trust you, you don't need to have them. And that was where it was at, right? But I wanted him because I wanted to spend the time with him. And I know he was fine with that because he wanted the same, but it was very hard. So at one point I hit ChatGPT. This is after like 6 weeks or something of no one-on-ones, but we were in other meetings. Everything was fine. I'm like, is everything okay? Like I'm a 9 and I'm like just trying to align, and my human design it knew. So it knew what I was looking for very clearly, actually. It's like, oh yeah, you're fine. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, he trusts you, and these things you're telling me about the signs are essentially him trusting you, right? So don't worry about it. And obviously it was true. I wasn't really worried about it, but I was just curious how it was going to explain it to me, how ChatGPT was going to explain it to me. Because what I found is in this work, like the personality and all that work, ChatGPT is actually able to help me see things I couldn't see before in the same way or ever. So another good example was like, I started talking a little bit about how I built things there with ChatGPT, because I was like really curious about it. I'm like, hey, I built things in a certain way. I thought about it this way. Yeah, about 80% of it is what I would normally do, but there's this 20% like, why? Like, why did I think about it like that? Why did I do that? It came back and said, well, you're a systems thinker because of your personality and this, and it went pretty far. It didn't even use systems thinking, but that was essentially what it was saying. And then it basically went back and said, basically, you built that way. You built the products you worked on that way because you were in an environment where that way of building was the only way you were gonna make sure you were trying to make sure that whatever you build continues for a long time. And it basically said the way you built those things was specifically designed around that need you had and what you saw needed to be done to make sure it lasts beyond your time there. And like, I can't dive into the specifics, but like, because of Dropbox and not wanting to share, but it was like so spot on about like why I built that way. And that way was not like, it wasn't, to be clear, it wasn't the processes of building. It was actually that's why I don't want to share it, but the output of what we built. It's like, you built it that way for this reason. I'm like, holy crap, like, you're right. I subconsciously was building that way for that reason.
One thing that comes up for me on that is how to decouple your reaction from being like, oh, you're right, this is true, from treating it as one of those confirmation bias things. Like reading a horoscope, you can always find things that you think are true.
Yeah.
And then getting convinced that the way it described the thing that you did to yourself is genuinely, absolutely true. Taking something basically for its face value.
I think that goes back to what we all say now, or starting to say more, which is like, essentially the two words are judgment and taste. If it gave me some bullshit, I'd know it. So, but that's my taste and judgment. And I've spent enough time knowing myself without AI that like, if it's honestly in that personality side, for whatever reason, I've never gotten anything not valuable or incorrect, in my opinion. But yeah, it can gaslight me for sure, right? Like, sycophancy, all that, fine. But like, cutting through that, it's like, did I get value from understanding that? Tremendous amounts of value. tremendous amounts, because now I'm like, oh, okay. I don't need to build like that in other scenarios, or if I'm building like that, there could be this hidden reason I didn't see before.
I want to ask some nitty-gritty questions. So you mentioned at the very beginning of our conversation that you have this project set up that in ChatGPT now that understands you, and I assume it's based on Enneagram and Human Design. Tell me more about how this project is set up.
This is actually the one I use for these things.
Yeah. So it's a project. What's in the project files?
Yeah, so the project files are my Enneagram.
Like just the
like the
based on which
instruction,
test?
like the
exactly?
instruction knows my Enneagram. And I just told it 9, maybe a wing, whatever. I mean,
Okay.
because it's AI, like you could put as much context as you
Yeah.
want.
So this is
Right.
in instructions. It's not a file.
The
that you upload?
Enneagram is an instruction because there's not much more to it.
Okay.
And
You're like,
I
I'm
assume-
Enneagram 9.
Well, and I assume the AI already knows about Enneagram, which is true.
Yeah, which is true. Yeah.
But if I was using AI that didn't, for whatever reason, like a local one or whatever it is, or
Yeah.
even local one.
Yeah, let's just talk about
Yeah.
ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So you
So
put
if it's ChatGPT or Claude or even Gemini, it knows, it has that knowledge. So I would tell it that. I would tell it my human design, and then I would give the artifacts are more like my human design chart or any other context that I want to share in there, because it doesn't have my chart. Even if I gave it my data and all that, it's not going to go make me my chart. So I want my chart, but I can assume it knows about human design because there's a lot of publicly available materials, tons and tons. Perfect, great. So it's mostly things like that. So if I had an MBTI report, any reports I had, my in-color insight, I did that many years ago. I shoved that in there too, even though it's kind of old and stale. Yeah, and then I had a chat, a long-running chat on that one, but I could easily have done more. That was about checking like what my boss thought about things. But that chat I started with, this is his Enneagram, and in his case, he built a manual. Like, some people do the operating manuals, especially execs. So he built a manual, and that manual was what I used in the chat, not as project files, but in the chat, I'd be like, my boss is an Enneagram type 5. This is his manual of how he thinks about it. I even had it first say, I'd love for you to interpret this because the Enneagram 5 wrote it. Like, kind of like a,
Yeah.
right? And that was interesting.
Yeah.
Nothing bad, just very interesting to see how it broke it down, why he wrote it,
Right.
which is stuff you might not understand either. And so that was cool. But then it was like asking these kind of questions, or, that one, what I did also is I actually took his manual and made a project for it. And
Okay.
it was like the Morgan bot. And then I was even helping colleagues, but like it was giving like such accurate Morgan-like feedback.
That's amazing.
Because it was between knowing his Enneagram 5 and then knowing and having his manual.
And so now that you have this project with instructions and your human design chart, whenever you have more of a personal,
I want to understand this, or it says this, I felt like
you start a
this,
chat.
Yeah. Easy.
Got it. Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, completely switching gears. I want to know how you post so much content. What's the system?
Yeah.
You post so many tweets, blogs.
I need to do better on some of that. I'm gonna. But the truth is, it's lots of notes. Basically, like, I think there's a systematic workflow, whether it's conscious or not, that people go through around creating content. A long time ago, I studied it because we were building a bunch of content stuff and wanted to understand it. And that's just studying like how people created blog posts, like nothing fancy. But that got me to a framework and or some kind of thing, which is like the key to writing the content is actually the idea. And one idea can actually lead to lots of content. So there's almost a flow of idea, topic, content. Same idea, different topic, content, right? So that mental model made me realize that like I can pull up all kinds of old notes that I've written, maybe even some of those after a meeting. And there's gold.
Do you still write a lot of notes now? What's your system for writing notes?
I just use the Notes app on.
And right now, do you use voice to text?
I'll use voice to text.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll do voice memos. Yeah, everything.
Okay.
Because now everything can just be shoved into AI to organize it, find insights, all that. So it's more about, like, to me, it's more about capturing all the raw inputs.
Got it. So you have a bunch of notes. Okay.
Yeah. And then literally, like, want to write something, go look through the notes, find some sentence or statement, and then like figure out what I want to say about it, work with ChatGPT as needed, whether it's editing, brainstorming, deep research, whatever. I'm just using it as an editor. I'm using it as a researcher and editor.
Are you systematic about when you sit down to actually distill your notes to write content? Or because for example, one thing that I always struggle with is my desire for spontaneity and my desire for being systematic. And those desires exist at the same time. I'm not a very, I'm kind of in between being very routine oriented and not. And so then I'm like, okay, I need to build out a system. I start with building out a system, and then I have this desire to bomb the system.
So like if you're good at spontaneously having an idea and wanting to just share it, then I'm skipping a lot of the steps in a good way and I'm just posting it.
So you're allowing yourself to do that.
Yeah, like for example, after this, I might walk away with some insight in just my mind, and I might just post it and call it a day. So that's probably the main mechanism. I think the second mechanism is closer to what you're saying, but what I found with things like this, I'm posting X amount in Y amount of time. I'm posting once a day. I'm posting once a week. And then trying to just, essentially it's old school content calendar crap. And just forcing yourself to have that, and then sitting down at
what tools are you using for your content? And do you schedule content? I assume you schedule content.
I schedule content because I have to. Otherwise, it goes out at any time, which is bad. So I use Typefully only for scheduling.
Typefully, that's for Twitter or for anything?
Twitter, anything actually.
Got it. Okay.
I used to use Buffer. I think Buffer's a little heavyweight for it, and Typefully really figured it out for Twitter, where it's a lot more intuitive the way it works for me, and it's less of a power scheduler, but it's very good. I don't use any of their AI features. I haven't found them to be very good. I don't care for them. But the raw scheduling, that's the one I use now. And I've tried many things over the years, even back in the day. I was one of the first 5,000 users on Twitter.
Wow.
We actually built a twit. It was called Twit This at the time, TWIT, this, for whatever reason, not Tweet This. But we actually built the button before the button existed, Tweet This or whatever. Now they don't matter. So really early there, we even built I had an engineer build a script, a PHP script when that was a thing, to do scheduling. This was before Buffer and all those things existed. So something I've been doing a long time is the short of it. But that's for scheduling, because that makes that easy. And then the majority of it is just whatever I actually use deep research a lot, because I find that to be really helpful, whether it's Perplexity for some of it or ChatGPT or even Claude, in order to get context or examples or help me validate something I'm thinking when I'm writing something bigger or more thoughtful. But yeah, it's about sitting down and doing that, but no fancy tools. Like honestly, for the longest time before I jumped on Typefully, because I want to do cross posting, I would use, Twitter has a native scheduling feature.
Yeah. But now you also do video content. You've had podcasts multiple times. What is the process there?
For the video content, I found a team that iterates like it's a product. And so we're still iterating, but we're getting there. And now, with my Lisp and the voice, we're working on some stuff where we can fix that problem in the content. So that I've been looking for this team for a long time, and they just happen. I found them a couple of years ago and really enjoy working with them. They're also working on I have a daily operator links newsletter right now. They're the ones that built out that and are working on it. So they're like one team that's very focused on content for me, but that's very much non-text, all video, right? Like even all those links, I'm finding those links. They're not finding them. But they're building the systems and helping me do a bunch of that. And that's just an experiment we all wanted to run. I'm trying to think if there's anything else useful there. I think it's so easy to create content these days. Like I'll give you another example. A very good friend of mine, he's more challenged with writing, but when he speaks, it's awesome. So I helped him create processes. Sometimes I'll just do it for him, where I'll take a transcript of his and turn it into really good content. Because he's really good at speaking. Like when he speaks, you totally get what he's saying. If he tries to write it, it's just not the way his brain works. So he struggles. So then I'm like, hey, and I told him this a year and a half ago or something. Just give me your transcript. You're brilliant. Just give me your transcript.
That's awesome.
And I'll help you turn it into content. And it was super easy. Like his transcripts are that good. Like
Wow.
they're some of the best ways I can take that and get it on brand in one shot or two off just his transcript. But that's because his voice is in there. He speaks very eloquently and properly about the things he's talking about. I also told him, hey, say it like this, or give him a little bit of a prompt back in the day of like how to speak in there. But once we figured that out, we were able to do that. So to me, it's more like with AI, number one, and number two, like with AI and the ability to have AI be multimodal with all these things, there's so much more open to how people can express themselves.
Can you give me one concrete idea for how you take one insight or an idea and turn it into multiple pieces of content? Like basically digesting one idea into, say, 5 tweets.
Yeah, I think one way to think about that, if you really want to push it really far, is and this is why I mean, like, I use it more as a researcher and editor. I'm not really trying to use it as a writer per se.
But you could use it as an idea generator.
Yeah. You could use it as a writer too. I'm not saying it's like out of scope. I'd rather use it as a writer for my product marketing and the marketing pages. But voice and things like that are still a struggle, although I've found a lot of ways to get it good enough or right. But basically, like, if you... Okay, how about this? You give me an idea, and I'll tell you how to walk through it.
Okay, very simple idea that I think can be turned into a lot of pieces of content, but I'm always like, oh, content should always be original. Take action. Action precedes clarity. How would you turn it into a lot of different pieces of content?
Sure. Yeah, that's great. So I think what I would do is, the first thing I would do on something like that is actually like and this is if I'm playing around with the idea. So this is like more of an exploration exercise to find topics. But I don't think you can write something without knowing who you're writing for. So first of all, that's why it's just an idea. The topic includes a bundle of who you're writing for and what it should say and whatever, in my opinion. So I would put that in ChatGPT and be like, I would love to get different perspectives on this statement. And then usually when I do just something like that, it will get so much gold in what it gives me back. Because it'll say, well, if you're this type of person or this type of person, it would think like this, think like that, all that, this and that. And so from there, usually whatever response it gives me, I get inspired by that. And then I find where I want to go dig deeper and kind of expand and broaden the topics. Another one that I find really powerful in this context, it would probably work, is the prompt is literally write me a comprehensive deep research prompt to dig into this. And I'll give it more context because I'm really debating whether this will resonate or that will resonate or this will. Then it'll give me the prompt. Then I'll go run the prompt and I'll go bring the research back to that chat because I'll do it in separate chats. I'll be like, okay, this is what I got back. How should I think about this? Or how should we think about this? Or what are the pros and cons and all that? So I'm more using it as that thinking partner that you essentially never had to help you essentially deconstruct, reconstruct, repurpose an idea.
I feel like the idea that I gave you is very simplistic. What would be an idea that you would create multiple pieces of content from? Just give me an example of an idea.
I actually thought it was good if you're going for that kind of content.
For like motivational content?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was good because, and you might even find more practical stuff right from there as you start sort of digging in, right? But a more practical one, one of my favorite one actually, and I think everyone should be doing this, and is basically like tell a story. So I'd rather start with a story, and a story that's real for me. We talked about many stories today. So let's say I want to write about entrepreneurship. Well, I probably need to find a good hook. A great hook for me is when I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
So I'd probably go to chat and be like, I really want to write about this. Here's a voice memo of me talking about that story. Help me turn it into something useful or some content for other founders who are going to sort of learn this lesson that I have in mind about this, which is like the earlier you start, the better. I started it 4 years ago, but I just made that up. But it can help me find all those hooks and all those things. And so I'll just work with it as an editor to help me like edit down, edit up, do the research, bring it back, and then figure out how I should say it. I also have an advantage that like I have a ton of content and writing out there. that like
You could
as a
repurpose.
result of that, I can get things that are closer to my voice with less edits. But it's still very hard to get AI to write in someone's voice. It's not impossible. I've gotten very close to it. But if you don't edit it, you're going to find things that don't sound like you. But a lot of people don't know what they sound like. So that's a little bit of or don't know how to sound like.
Figure that out first. To wrap up, I wanted to ask you some short questions. What is your life philosophy in one sentence?
It was all a dream.
I have to ask a follow-up about this. Can you elaborate?
We're having an experience right now. However you remember it and I remember it is going to be different, right? After it's done, we can't go back. Did it exist? Or was it a dream? Your dream, my dream, separate dreams. But we're still here together. But the experience we had is very different. Yeah, there's commonalities. But our memories of it are like a dream. Some of them we remember, some of them we don't, some of them are nightmares. So yeah, the philosophy is it was all a dream.
So just to interpret it, my interpretation of this philosophy is that everyone lives in their own head and you can control your reality because everyone's perception of the reality is different.
That's definitely a part of it. Another part of it for me is the idea that if we put a lot of weight on everything we experience, but if we think of it as a dream, we're going to put less weight on it after the dream and probably put the appropriate weight like in the moment and all that while we're there and have the presence. So one word, presence. The sentence, it was all a dream. Because I think that's how you get to presence, as weird as that sounds.
I love it. What is one trait that you have that you're really grateful for?
Yeah, I don't know where I started going into a few options and started getting into how did I get those traits, but that's not the question you asked. So the simple traits I'll say is the one I probably value almost more than any other trait is empathy.
Oh, interesting. I thought you would say curiosity. Okay.
One might lead to the other depending on how you think about
That's
it
true.
for certain aspects.
What advice do you give the most?
There's a statement that I said to my co-founder, but before that I said it to the person who introduced us. Has nothing to do with that relationship or anything. And so this is probably the one I would say that I don't exactly, I'm not able to say it to most people exactly like this, but underneath, if anyone's gotten advice from me, they're going to understand this. Underneath it is essentially the statement, which is the only way to do more is do more. Take that however way you want. It's super philosophical. It can be unpacked in many different ways. And I'm not saying do more. That's the only thing. The only way to do more is to do more, but I'm not saying do more. That is the most confusing thing you can imagine. But it is true. The only way to do more, if you want to do more, is to do more. But I'm not advocating that you do more. I'm just saying if that's true, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right? And then you start thinking about that from me being a founder, most successful founders out there. I don't know a founder who's not doing more to do more. Why does Elon have so many companies? Why does Google have so many products?
The only thing that this makes me think of is that you need to really understand yourself to see what is the outcome that you want. And if the outcome is that you want is to have a ton of things, then the only answer is to do more. But perhaps that's not the outcome that you want. And then there is a different path.
Yeah, but you went to things. You're more with things. They don't have to be things.
Or just like life that you want to live.
More execution, more ideas. Like let's put it this way. And in today's world, I think this is more real than ever. I think the only way to grow is to have more shots on goal. And the only way to have more shots on goal is that philosophy.
Is to do more things.
Yeah. Whatever way you want to look at it.
Yeah. And what are you excited about in the next 10 years? Although I realize next 10 years is very uncertain. What are you excited about in the next year? Or 5 years?
I think the word that comes to mind is opportunity. And I think like part of this is just looking back and saying, like, because I probably think a lot more than I should. So looking back, it's like, where were the things where I felt like I could have done more? And the word opportunity is what comes up. It's like, if there's an opportunity in front of me, being able to capitalize on it or leverage it or use it, or even softer things. We're at a place right now where there's an abundance of opportunity. I think there always is. But right now, there's a abundance of opportunity because of a uncertainty around how fast and exactly how things are going to change, which is some of the most fun times you can possibly have. As long as you're not sitting there worrying about everything existential that you don't control. So those are all the caveats.
Hiten, thank you so much for your time. This was an
Thanks for
awesome
having me.
conversation as always. Thank you.